Hello, foodie fans. Welcome to the Big Food Talk, produced by Tough Monkey Entertainment. I'm your host, Sal Conca. This show supports restaurants, chefs, and food pioneers with your help. Head to bigfoodtalk.com to make your donation today, or check out our fun apparel line with proceeds going directly to participating restaurants. Special thanks to the Long Island Food Council, DineLI Facebook group, and Yelp Long Island for supporting this episode. Today, I'm speaking with my good friend Michael from Gianco Environmental Services. Gianco provides environmental engineering, waste management, and health and safety services for businesses, restaurants, and even homeowners right here on Long Island. As we know, businesses and restaurants have been affected by the COVID pandemic in ways we haven't even realized yet. Michael offers his expertise on the importance of deep cleaning and sanitizing, as well as why restaurant owners should be proactive about waste management and its impact on the environment. Let's hear Michael's story. Hey, Michael, welcome to the Big Food Talk. I'm happy to have you here today. I know we know each other through the Long Island Food Council, but this conversation is one that I'm really curious to dive into in terms of environmental services, waste management, all these things that affect the food and commercial businesses here on Long Island. How are you doing today? How are you doing through all this?
First, thank you, Sal. I really appreciate the opportunity to join you today, and look forward to sharing some thoughts and some important information along the way, and certainly our capabilities. We're doing well. Aside from my own battle with COVID recently, which my heart goes out to all who've experienced it, and some not fared not so well. I'm very grateful to have recovered, and look forward to giving back any way I can.
And I was going to say, that's a big deal. You're our first guest on the show that actually had COVID and went through it. Anything you'd like to share there about it, or your experience and your family? And I know you guys are all safe and healthy now, but I know it was a very trying time. How long did it take you to go through the?
I fortunately I was home throughout the process, but isolated quarantine, my room, for almost 4.5 weeks before you really got out. But thankfully, the respiratory concerns, what puts everybody in the hospital these days, never really became a factor. Significant list of symptoms that most have had, others didn't. It seems to be the number one comment is everybody experiences it differently, and from extreme to didn't even know they had it. We did get tested for antibodies recently, and thankful to this point, I do have them, and later found out my family as well. So very grateful to have come through the other side.
Yeah, exactly. And, that's great news for you guys. I'm so happy that you guys are healthy
Thank you.
now. And obviously it allows
Thank
us to do this interview and get back to business,
Absolutely, lots to
business
talk
as usual.
about. Lots to
I,
talk about. That's for sure. Yeah,
Absolutely. Through the council,
yeah,
we've met in person many times. Now we're doing
yeah.
virtual events monthly with the Food Council. Michael Tucker has been hosting, which is great. Um, you're involved in environmental engineering, waste management. These are businesses that people don't really talk about. How did you and your family get involved with this? You've been around for 30 years. What's the background there? How did you get involved in this industry?
Um, Long story short, my dad had started a plastics recycling company about 28, 29 years ago, in which I was just coming out of school. I had done a stint in Wall Street for a short period of time, and found it really wasn't right for me for a number of reasons. And he was just getting started in what he was doing, which essentially was the implementation and management of recycling programs to the manufacturing industry. The bottle containers, the ketchup bottles, the salt shakers, and any other product made of plastic. Utilizing different technologies to produce it, injection molding, blow molding, and the like. Fast forward about 15, 16 years ago, the industry had matured significantly, evolution to sustainability, reduction in waste generation coming out of factories, all for the right reasons. Reuse, reducing, amount of materials, better ways of using those materials ultimately led to a reduction in the waste stream, which really created the opportunities that we have today and redefined us to who we are today as an environmental management company. Introducing obviously the capabilities and disposal services in the hazardous material arena, the industrial waste side of service, as compared to the traditional solid waste management sector, which most people are very familiar with, really as the front side of waste management, the garbage that goes out the back door. We tend to specialize more in what's in that dumpster that cannot be for regulatory reasons or shouldn't be for perhaps a recycling initiative to be implemented, and everything kind of spun off from there into the emergency management arena, the restoration community around mold, asbestos, lead, now COVID, where we are actively involved in restoration, decontamination, disinfecting, deep cleaning, and been very active in many sectors, but really been focusing over the last couple of years with the involvement of uh, the Long Island Food Council on bringing those services and capabilities, because there's a lack of information and real knowledge coming to the restaurant community, to the commercial establishments in how to manage and certainly implement these programs that are either required or certainly beneficial on many different levels.
Sure. So let's talk about some of those benefits. I mean, I'm going to try to avoid as many big words as possible for people, right? So I know we could get really deep in the weeds here if we start going down that path. But why should businesses really be concerned about waste management or the environment, things like this? What are the real true benefits? Why should a business be proactive about these things?
Well, simply health safety. In many ways, especially within the restaurant arena, obviously, it's the contamination, rodent control, cost reduction measures as it relates to better use of material, segregation of those that are recyclable from non-recyclables, and from a compliance perspective, ensuring that those items, those materials that are not perhaps cleaning materials, old paints, chemicals that they may, gasolines and fuels that may find themselves into dumpsters, and they not, regulation requires them to be managed separately.
And so can you provide us an example of like how or why a food related business would use your services? Like what's a good example of that?
Sure. Well, currently, restaurants are reaching out regarding their protocols and cleaning requirements associated with reopening, and ensuring ongoing maintenance and cleaning routines are followed. Where we're doing deep cleaning and disinfecting. Traditional maintenance obviously will address the primaries. We're doing the baselines and the extensive cleaning and disinfecting, whether it's on a weekly basis, biweekly, monthly, service type requirement. We're also doing a lot of work in the inspection arena, where we're doing a verification, the cleanliness of an operation in the facility, using technology, using visual and analytical data, inspection and sampling, to determine the cleanliness of a location. It's not going to tell us, although it's available, that, for example, a bacteria or a virus is present, or COVID specifically is present. It is available. It's very expensive to target it. So we're taking a little bit more of a conservative economic approach, talking about the overall cleanliness. Is it a pass or fail in relation to an industry segment that sets a parameter to determine the overall condition of a property? So we're seeing that restaurateurs will also look to us for simple service around grease trap maintenance, duct and hood cleaning, to maintain, both required and maintenance needs. Doing a lot of work in the engineering arena as it relates to their permits, around the space, whether it be their wastewater collection, their grease trap installations, their designs, the property needs around their environmental requirements around storm drain and property, maintenance issues specific to the environmental arena.
Now, on Long Island, we have a lot of owner operated, family owned businesses, family owned restaurants. Do you find that restaurant owners themselves, do they take the proactive approach? Are they knowledgeable? Do they know they have to meet certain regulations right now? Or are you finding a lot of confusion in the marketplace? I mean, even over the past couple of years, have you found that they really just don't understand the ins and outs of this stuff, or are they knowledgeable in what they need to do?
Across the board, honestly. And I hate to use the analogy, the wild, wild west. I think the playing field has been leveled, unfortunately, for reasons not preferred. But at the end of the day, protocols and procedures are going to dictate how the industry comes out of this and what it will look like going forward in the expectation of the consumer and certainly the employees who do work there. You will see consistency in the sanitary requirements. They had set certain guidelines of which most could not be seen. The new procedures and protocols, a lot of them are visual. People do want to see their food handlers wearing gloves, wearing masks. Not every facility is doing it. Those that do, I think, are at this point, going to see some advantage. Most owners and restaurateurs, they want to be, leading the way, but they also need to be shown how to do it. And then there is certainly an economic factor. They have to be able to, meet the demands of the expenses of some of these additional services and requirements. And where does that, trickle down, obviously, to the final bill, in the check in which as consumers, we pay. But I think it'll be a necessity. It's not going away, and I believe it has changed in some ways for the better, but in other ways, perhaps it's going to make it more difficult for many of them to recover and survive.
Now, I remember you talking about at a food council meeting once, there's some really forward thinking and progressive programs happening on Long Island, like anaerobic digesters, which,
Mhm.
things like this. How is that affecting the landscape and the environment? How is this good for the environment? What do people need to know about these initiatives that are happening here on Long Island?
It's not just on Long Island. We're finding, for example, anaerobic digestion, which is the process of recycling food waste. We have many different ways of addressing food waste, obviously from the Long Island Cares, the Long Island Harvest, all of the not-for-profits who serve the community with edible, reusable food. The industry of anaerobic digestion processes non-sellables, non-reusables, and diverts it from landfill, creating in an advanced technology waste to energy solutions in some of the more localized, let's just say, equipment at the restaurant level. It diverts it into a more manageable waste stream, further reducing their waste disposal costs. At the larger food manufacturing processing level, they're converting that to energy, finding ways to reduce or eliminate operating expenses associated with powering, the processing facilities. And it's also proven to be an economic benefit as certain materials and byproducts, the methanes are sellable commodities. There's a lot of federal tax credits that are also available. So depending upon, the degree of involvement and the capability of the processor, based on volume and location, dictates the program that we might put in place for them to meet that need. There's also a strong shift in regulatory requirement as more and more states are now mandating the larger generators, the 2,000-pound plus capacity facilities, to implement segregated methods of managing these waste streams as well.
And now, is that something that restaurant owners or food manufacturers here locally, can they take advantage of these things? Is there ways for them to get involved? Like, how does that process work?
At the retail level, it's still very cottage and case by case. My group is actively involved in discussion, negotiation, and financing negotiations with some capital partners to finance the development of commercial anaerobic digestion facilities, which will be able to support community, Long Island specifically, the region as we roll these out, where the individual generators will have a solution. The individual generators are still a little, there'll be a while before they are going to have to really step up their efforts. But the catering halls, which obviously have a different footprint today than they did 6 months ago, 3 months ago, the large manufacturers, they will and are starting to look at better ways to manage their waste stream and requirements around doing so, as it is a very expensive process.
Sure. And I think it's great for people to understand that these processes and these organizations like yourself are in place to help and benefit the environment, help and benefit the industry and the local economy. It's a great awareness builder. And I know you also provide services for not just the business sector, but also for personal people in their homes. Like, what do you offer for people? How do you help homeowners and things like that?
I really appreciate you asking that. So thank you. Commercial clients often are developed, through our residential relationships and vice versa. We bring those capabilities across the spectrum. In the residential market, most frequently, it's inspection related work, indoor air quality testing, mold, asbestos, lead, oil tanks. Many of the older homes converting from oil to gas. We're actively involved in the abatement and abandonment and removal of the tanks. In the purchase of the properties, the investigation, the sampling of the property itself, whether it's soil or structure. So we do see a lot of project specific work that relates to the residential market. We're in the commercial market. It's predominantly routine service around industrial waste, black drums, those waste streams that cannot end up in the solid waste sector.
Sure. And so I know you're involved in a lot of different groups. We've mentioned the Long Island Food Council already. That's one of them. There was one that caught my eye that you're involved with. It's the United States Green Building Council. What do they do? What type of efforts do they support, and how are you involved with them?
Well, thank you again, because it brings awareness and highlights something that I've been actively involved in for the past 10 plus years. For those who may be familiar with Leadership, Energy, and Environmental Design as a brand, that brand of identifying how a building is built and operated to efficiencies and sustainable principles was developed by the United States Green Building Council. Throughout the states, throughout the country, there are chapters. Long Island has our own chapter. We've been very active in making a difference in the how communities, how residences, how buildings are built and operated, working predominantly in advocacy with the towns, with the municipalities, and certainly the individual owners who are engaged in better building principles. From obviously simple high efficiency lighting, mechanicals, recognizing the variety of channels and rebates that are available to them for both economic help, as well as resources around the information and the experts, within the respective fields that support it. But the Long Island Food Council, Long Island Green Building Council, has been a forerunner in helping, transform how buildings are built, for the generations to come.
Yeah, and that's really important. I mean, we talk a lot about the environment, and well, the people talk a lot about the environment, global warming. It's an important topic, especially here on Long Island, where we know how precious our resources are. Being on this little island that we live on here, our beaches, our the all the things that we find dear here, the parks, the nature, all of that. And really tough issues that we deal with here. We know that hunger on Long Island is rising now due to COVID. There's so many things, the economic pressures that we're gonna face in the coming months and things like that. We touched on it a bit, but I know, health and safety is really the big concern for restaurants, food operators, food manufacturers, everybody in this space. I know you're helping with that, but what do you see for health and safety measures going forward? Like, what's your pulse on how restaurants will be able to operate going forward? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I'm seeing different measures in different locations based on simple to complex solutions. Um, I was in a deli this morning that put up their own partitions, couple of 1x4s, and some plexiglass sheet they bought at the hardware store.
Mhm.
Clearly, their measures of cleaning, have increased. Everybody is quote unquote geared up these days with their masks and their gloves to both visually show their initiatives as well as mandated requirements. Um, we're seeing a lot of the higher end companies in the space rolling out very aggressive disinfecting campaigns that are involving, whether it's daily or weekly deep cleaning, which I mentioned, disinfecting, using specialized equipment and certainly materials to take cleaning to a to a greater to a greater level. It's truly not just sanitizing. It is disinfecting. It's the next level of it. Getting to a point where we're seeing more of a hospital grade environment in the restaurant industry. It's always been a step above the traditional commercial, but it may not have been as diligent as say a hospital. But we are seeing that gap closing, and I think as more and more facilities and buildings open, we're going to see that side of the business, completely changed. I think that effort will be clear. How they're going to address patronage and sitting occupancy, that's a very deep unknown because the industry cannot afford to operate at 50% capacity.
Yeah.
Their model has to change, and some of these places are not going to be able to adapt. Um, the ones that seem to be doing very well right now and seem ready to really take the next step are ironically the ones that had already had previous takeout models. They were, maybe 20, 25% of their business at the time, but that model certainly became, it was easy to step it up while the doors got shut, and they seem to be holding their own or doing well from the places I've either been or spoken with. So that's encouraging to see. But how they're going to open up the doors to occupancy at a reduced rate of consumer, that's going to be very, very difficult to change. I'm not sure how that's going to work, and I feel for that industry greatly.
Absolutely, as we all do. And, the marketing side of me and what I do, I see a lot of like you said, visually, it's going to be important for patrons to just see the efforts going on.
Hmm.
So I think, video and social media and all those things where we're showing people specifically how these restaurants are taking initiative and taking care of whatever procedures and matching whatever guidelines are put forth by the CDC or your Board of Health or whatever it might be, that those things are happening and giving the public a comfort level. Yeah, we still have obviously a ton of unknowns. I mean, we're recording this, it's the end of May. We just passed Memorial Day, and the good news is, yes, we're coming into um, a new era where we have not a new era, but we're coming into the summer months where outdoor seating is prevalent. So
Hmm.
some of the seaside restaurants and things like that are going to get by on the outdoor seating, I believe, and that type of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see as we go through that what happens as we approach fall and back into the winter next year. So a lot of unknowns here.
And to your point, the outdoor, those who have the space and the experience with outdoor food service are going to benefit, certainly in the short term. No question about that. Biggest challenges are those that don't have the space available. And will the towns suddenly allow them to pop, cocktail tables in front and along the sidewalks? And what is that going to look like, when that occurs, when you have Restaurant Row um, down Main Street? It's going to be, it's a very difficult place for the restaurant industry right now. And organizations like the Long Island Food Council are critical and at the forefront of, the information, quelling the disinformation and bringing the value and the resources and the experts, to bear in difficult times. No question.
Absolutely. Well, Michael, I really appreciate you taking the time today. I know you're a busy guy. I know you have tons to do and you're helping a lot of people out there. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you or restaurants to get in touch with you if they're interested in your services?
Anytime, any question. I make my cell available at 516-250-1039. The office can be reached at 631-952-9900. Can be found on the web at Gianco, Gianco.com. And I'm available anytime at michaelg@gianco.com.
Wonderful. Yeah, and we'll put all that information in the show notes for the episode as well. And Michael, I wish you nothing but continued success in the future. And I know we'll continue our relationship. I'll see you at the next Food Council meeting.
Absolutely. Sal, thank you again. Really appreciate it. Great job. Great show. Thank
Thank
you
you.
and look forward to it anytime.
Appreciate it. Take care. Thanks for tuning in to The Big Food Talk, produced by Tough Monkey Entertainment. Subscribe on iTunes and wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Instagram for behind-the-scenes takes or watch complete episodes on YouTube. Don't forget to make a donation at bigfoodtalk.com.